Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Growthcast podcast. And today's podcast is special because I have with me two esteemed professors who are going to guide us to become better with our job and do well in our career. They have written a great book which is called Leaf Frog 6 Practices to Thrive. And we'll focus our discussion based on the things that they have talked in this book so that you can get your nuggets of wisdom. I'm also going through the book and it has been very well written. So welcome Priyank sir, welcome Mukesh sir, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Shashank. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you.
Thanks, Shashank.
I'll start with the first question. I think this question haunts every professional that we are doing so much and still we are not going anywhere. So I'm focusing a lot on the inputs, but outputs are not coming. So my first question is, have rules of success been changed in the job market right now or in the professional world? If yes, how can one tackle that?
So, one of the rules of this podcast, sorry, sorry, guys, sorry. You'll have to start again. I'm sorry about
No, no,
this.
this can be edited, so it will be taken
Okay.
care of.
So you start with
So,
one of the rules.
so,
Hmm.
one of the rules on this podcast, Shashank, is that Priyank, being junior to me, he gets to answer all the difficult questions, and I coast on the easy ones. So, Priyank, all yours.
Thank you, Shashank. Thank you, Mukesh. Shashank, to answer your question, the rules of success are not changed, but they have to be adapted to slightly differently. So you have to work hard. You have to build networks. You have to work around what's there in the ecosystem. And that's what we've talked about. How you get there, how you adapt to this has changed. And one has to keep changing that to thrive in careers, to grow in careers, and so on. And we've talked about that in different ways in the book. For example, you have to continue working hard. So grit is the first chapter. You have to put
Right.
in the hours. You have to sort of get your act together there. And then there are multiple other ideas that help you grow and thrive.
Would you like to double down on the grit piece? Because I was also going through that chapter, and most of the time people feel that, okay, we are continuously doing things, but we are not getting to the outcome. But grit remains the foundation stone of everything if you want to get results. So, how can one develop grit? And if you both can touch base on that.
So, Shashank, we have defined grit as being having two components. It is having passion and perseverance.
Right.
So, in order to do something with grit, you first need to be passionate about what you are doing, and then you have to be persevering in terms of accepting failure and saying failure is part of my growing. I will learn from the failure. I will improve in what I'm doing, and we talk a lot about deliberate practice there.
Right.
Now, in practice, you just keep doing the same thing again and again and again. But when you deliberately practice something, you make that 1% improvement every time you repeat the same act.
Right.
And it's a simple math 1.00 to the power of 365, which is if you do the same thing every day for a year, you will end up at 1.00. But 1.00 to the power of 1.01, where you make a 1% improvement every day, 365 times is 37.
Right.
So the improvement will come through deliberate practice. Priyank?
One of the other areas, Shashank, that we talk about here is that you have to learn to deal with boredom. You've often heard this word, we're bored of this, hum bore ho gaye, it's repetitive, it is kind of not exciting enough. We living in a world where we are so easily distracted, and social media is a great form of distraction. There are so many other things around us which are distracting us. For us to have grit, we need to learn that we will get bored in whatever we are trying to. It is up to us how to make it fun. It is up to us how to sustain our interest and actually get it done by making that job less monotonous and boring. But remember, getting bored is not an excuse to stopping your purpose, passion, discipline, whatever you do.
Got it. Well, at times boredom is also linked with laziness. Ki maybe I am so much accustomed to doing certain set of things कि I become lazy with it और मेरे को अपने comfort zone के बाहर नहीं निकलना है. So, is there a basic difference between doing things perfectly and then achieving boredom? Or maybe you are not willing to go out of your comfort zone, hence boredom is okay with you.
Shashank, these are just excuses. When we want to do something, we will get it done. Otherwise, whether it is boredom, you call it laziness, you call it, many other things that you can't, you find a justification to not getting things done. So really, the answer here is learn to deal with boredom, practice with purpose, practice deliberately, like Mukesh sir said,
Mhm.
and be completely passionate towards where you want to go, because only then will you enjoy the results of it and also get there.
Got it. So
And
what's your take on
Shashank, to relieve boredom, you can have small activities. And we've given the example of the spelling bee. These are small children um, in seventh and eighth grade in the US of Indian origin who have done very well in competition. Now they have to learn words which have Russian and German and Spanish roots. So to entertain themselves and relieve the boredom, they tried a simple experiment. They would keep go to their grandmother, who was of Indian origin, and her pronunciation was not what the kids had. This is all in the US. And the grandmother would pronounce the word with the English, with the Indian accent. Now, this would introduce peals of laughter and entertainment amongst the children, and this relieved the boredom. So, you have to find ways to relieve boredom when you are engaged in a task that is repetitive and that may be monotonous.
Got it, got it. So the first stage is developing grit and embracing boredom. Second is nudging, which is the second chapter in the book that we have talked about. So I wanted to understand what are some of the basic hacks around nudging that one professional or maybe working people can give themselves so that they remain motivated in the long run. So what are some kind of nudges that you will suggest people that they should keep on giving themselves maybe on a regular basis?
Mukesh?
Go ahead, Priyank.
Okay.
We'll answer each question in turn so that it unless there's a difficult question, then of course it's Priyank. So go ahead.
No worries.
So, nudging is based on the behavioral science, which has been popularized by Richard Thaler, who actually won the Nobel Prize for behavioral economics. What nudging tells you is that you have to drive behavior of people without taking away the choice, and of course, without any monetary incentives. Now, that concept can be applied to yourself as well. So it's not something that. So let me give you an example of a nudge, right? For example, today you are walking in a supermarket. Whatever is at eye level, you end up purchasing those products much more than what's at the top or at the bottom. When you are checking out of a website and you have certain options which are already pre-ticked for you, those are called as default options. That's a nudge. It's pushing you to accept that little insurance, give that extra tip, put money in donation, whatever. There may be different things where you end up doing. So they are driving behavior, but they still give you the choice. What happens when you apply this to yourself, right? So small examples. You want to exercise every day. How do you push yourself to get into an exercise mode every morning? A small nudge is keeping your shoes accessible and wearing them as soon as you are out of bed, so that you are pushed into getting out of the house and going and exercise. Another nudge, you want to learn how to play the guitar, right? Now, where do you put the guitar? Guitar will be stuck in some loft somewhere. Pull that out, get it tuned, keep it next to your desk. Every time you take a break, instead of picking up your phone and scrolling through Instagram, go pick up the guitar and strum a few chords. And over a period of time, you see these habits will change. So, what is it that you can do to nudge yourself is this chapter about. And these are just a few stories. The chapter has a lot more exciting
Right.
stuff. But I'll let Mukesh sir talk.
See, another small nudge is, for example, you have a calendar on your table with blocks on it, and you start crossing the days you exercise. So at the end of the day, at the end of a week, you find you've exercised 5 times, and just the motivation of crossing that box is enough to get you energized and eager to do the exercise, even if you're feeling lazy about it.
Got it, got it. And so, what is one nudge that you both use personally on a personal level to maybe make things better for you? What is your nudge?
Nice question, Shashank. So I tend to eat very fast, and my nudge is to use a very small spoon so that I eat in smaller quantities and I eat slowly. It takes a lot more effort to eat, so you kind of slower your pace of eating.
That is one thing that I can also adopt because I finish my meal in 5, 6 minutes and it's too fast. What's your nut, sir, Mukesh, sir?
So I've got two small nudges I'll talk about. One is that the day I've already eaten something sweet, let's say in the afternoon, and I don't want to have a sweet in the evening, as soon as I finish my dinner, I go to the toilet and I brush my teeth and floss my teeth. Now, once I've flossed my teeth, then there's no question of eating after that. So these are small nudge I use on a regular basis when I want to ensure that I keep my, for example, the sweet content within certain control.
Shashank, don't forget, both of us have food-related nudges. Huh?
Yeah,
The
that's
other nudge is at work. I love making lists. So I make a list in the morning every single day of 4 or 5 items, and the pleasure in crossing each item as you do it. By lunchtime, you have crossed 2 out of your 6 items that you want to do. So that list stays with me, and I carry that list. It's a physical list. I take an old envelope, write down the 5 things I need to do, and I keep crossing them off.
I think that's the that is one of the things that I like to double down on. Like I also keep on making list, but in general my efficiency is maybe 60-70% because chances are high Pareto principle applies and top 2 or 3 tasks will take most of your time. So other 4 5 which are there in the list they hardly get touched and then you tend to forget. So in situation like this, how can one be more efficient? Maybe seeking your wisdom here.
So, Shashank, one thing is to make a list every day. So, don't have a list of 20 things and keep it for a week.
Right.
So, tell yourself at the start of the day, these are 4 things I would like to do, which you think are most important for that particular day.
Right.
And then cross them as you do them. And again, I don't believe in completing everything immediately. Sometimes you can't do it. But that incremental step that you take, for example, you open a Word document and you start writing, and then you know you don't have enough information to complete that document.
Right.
But you made that first step, and that propels you forward. Priyank, what about you?
No, I think that's very well said. You have to also decide, Shashank, what goes on to the list. We often trying to put everything onto a list. In fact, we have a very nice story, which we'll share with you on how you prioritize lists. It's a Warren Buffett story. Okay, it's one of your favorite stories if you want to narrate that.
Can I read the story out to you?
Sure, 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 please.
This is a conversation between Warren Buffett and his pilot. And the pilot has been working for Warren Buffett. He's his personal pilot. And Warren is always telling him that, look, besides being my pilot, you need to have some ambition. You need to do something with your life. Now, how are you going about doing it? And this is the conversation that the two have. Warren Buffett is talking to Mike Flint, his personal pilot of several years. Warren has a 5 by 25 rule. Step 1, write down your top 25 goals. Step 2, draw a circle around your top 5. Step 3, focus on them. So Mike dutifully writes down his 25 goals and circles the top 5. Warren, what about the ones you didn't circle? Mike, the top 5 are my primary focus, but the other 20 come a close second. They are still important, so I will work on them intermittently. They are not urgent, but I still plan to give them a dedicated effort. Now, this is Warren Buffett's reply, and I think this sums up prioritizing. He says, no, Mike, you have it all wrong. Everything you didn't circle just became an avoid at all costs list. No matter what these things are, they get no attention from you until you have succeeded with your top 5.
Shashank, this is a very important lesson in curation, which is also one of our chapters in the book, which is how do you really put your effort, time in and make choices of what matters. And that's the essence of how curation works. So,
Right, right. I'll then shift gears and I'll move to the next chapter, which is the third chapter, be intellectually humble. And I think humbleness is a trait that's very rare these days. because people either tend to speak up a lot and then they become confident and then overconfident and then everything creeps in. So how can one be humble at the same time, like you have told, be intellectually humble? So what does intellectually humble means?
Sure. So the essence of this, Shashank, is to have strong ideas loosely held. You are strong about your opinions, your views, and your knowledge, but you are open enough to accept a different perspective, to look at things from somebody else's view also, to change your perspective based on additional information that you get. We are so confident, and sometimes, as we call it in the chapter as well, we are confident idiots for what we believe we know. But there is so much more in the world out there that influences our beliefs that we don't want to consider them. Intellectual humility is the ability to be open to other ideas as well. Okay.
To recognize what you don't know,
Right.
because we all have a limit to the amount of knowledge we have and what we know. And again, we have a short story on that that I'll quickly narrate. You've probably heard that if you put lemon juice in a pen and you write, nothing will be visible until you iron or heat the paper up. So this is this guy who hears this story and he thinks he's being very smart. So he applies lemon juice on his face and he takes a picture with a camera. Now the picture comes blank. We don't know why. Maybe the camera was defective. Maybe the reel that he was using was bad. But he gets a lot of confidence now that lemon juice on your face makes you invisible. So he applies lemon juice and he robs a bank. Not only that, he smiles and waves to the security cameras, full of confidence that he is invisible. Well, within a few hours, the police land up at his house, they catch him, and he then keeps explaining that I applied the juice. This story is repeated in the newspaper the next day, and a professor of psychology has a simple question. Can you be so stupid that you don't know how stupid you are? And that leads to what is called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where when you engage with a field, you initially are full of confidence about it. But as you increase your engagement and you dig further, you realize how little you know. But over a period, as you engage more and more, your confidence goes up as your knowledge goes up, and finally you become an expert in the field. So intellectual humility starts with recognizing that you should not be a confident idiot.
Right, right. But if we translate it to corporate world, so people who generally have say 10 plus or maybe sub senior level positions they are in, they come with certain set of bias or confidence that I know my shit in and out, so I know everything what is going on. And then there are conflicts because if two such personalities come and interact together, they come with very strong opinions. So in situation like this, how can one be intellectually humble and also avoid conflict? So how can one avoid conflict when you have this kind of bias which is in your hand that maybe I'm always right?
Shashank, the objective is very simple. Be open to ideas and get other people to be open to your ideas as well. It's
Right,
easier said than done. All of these practices are not easy to implement. I think the core of all of this is got to be where you demonstrate the ability to understand the other's perspective. Moment that
right,
happens, the ego comes down. It's
right,
managing egos, which
right.
is the core of intellectual humility.
Yeah. I've also read somewhere that if you dissociate person from their idea, then you are evaluating only on the merit of idea, not on basis of the person or their behavior. So
Yes,
that is also one good way of looking at it.
absolutely. Absolutely.
See, one thing that CEOs, I've noticed that some of them do, is they engage an executive assistant who's probably half or one third their age, who is
Right,
fresh from university, from college. Now, those youngsters come with a different set of skills and
right,
knowledge, for example, about social media, about technology. And you become very humble after that when you realize how far ahead these kids are.
right,
So I think we see that all the time because Priyank and me teach. So when we are now, for a small example, when students come and you're telling them something and they want to make a note of it. Now your normal method of making a note would be to take a pen out and take a paper out and start
right,
writing. These kids don't do that. They take their phone out and they make notes on the phone. So these are small things that when you engage with younger people, you realize that you need to upgrade your skill set, and then you become intellectually humble.
Think this happens with me also. The team that I work with, interns, they are used to sending me voice notes, and I'm someone who is used to type. So I type them some three, four paragraph full of messages, and then I get just a voice note, and I feel it's much more efficient. I was just typing for last 5, 6 minutes, and these are the people who just did it within 30 seconds. Also, sir, slightly digressing, would like to understand from you both, how is student behavior changing? Like now there is too much social media there. Now AI has also came in. So you are on ground there, you are interacting with folks who are basically, people call them Gen Zs. So how are they different from people with whom you interacted in, say, maybe early 2000 or 2010 to 2020? How that shift is happening in the academic world?
Shashank, the students are a lot more informed. They are smarter, they are thinking, they come well prepared also, because the information available or based on the topic that you give them is all available online. You're also up against AI. So the moment you ask them a question, they will quickly chat GPT it, and then they'll give you a perspective, right? So I think it's a challenge to be up to date. It's a challenge to give them a perspective that is beyond what the machine or the cyber world is actually thinking of. But I think more than that, Shashank, it is really sharpening their minds as teachers that we are focusing on, because you are giving them the ability not just to think but to question. See, understand one thing: within the world of AI, uh, it is not about what you know; it's about what you ask. So we have to work on that ability. And that is the change that we see. From a social media perspective, of course, that's a great way to sort of get information, knowledge, gossip, whatever you want to call it. And our students are really at top of the game on that as well. Okay.
So one of the simple rules I implement in my class is I have a infamous NTT rule, which is no technology on the table. So I don't allow my students to use any technology during the duration of the class. Students initially crib a lot, but at the end of the course, they always turn back and say, Professor, that was the wisest thing that you did. And we really learned because of that. And when you have a rule of no technology on the table, it's putting responsibility on yourself to keep the student engaged. So we are both playing a game, or we are upping our effort and upping our results, rather than play a game of getting to the bottom where you lose interest, I lose interest because you lost interest, and we are best wasting each other's time. And I find this NTT rule works very well, and students really appreciate it later. And many years later, when you meet them at the airport, they'll tell you NTT, and I get a lot of pleasure in hearing that from them.
And so what about open book exams? Like when I was in IMT, I was doing my MBA, those exams were a thing. So because of this chat GPT or AI thing, our open book exams is still there, or maybe they are also losing the stream because of this tech intervention.
No, they're there, Shashank. They're there. They're there with modifications. They're there with different ways of, ensuring that students are learning. At the end of the day, the objective is that there's got to be a learning process, and the learning process is what's relevant to them in their role, in their the discipline, the topic that they're doing. So, many of our colleagues have actually moved back to paper pencil exams. So we, from paper
Nice,
pencil, we'd moved to online exams, and now we've moved back to paper pencil for all the reasons that you just listed now.
nice. So I'll move to the next chapter, which is dancing with disciplines. This sounds very romantic, but in most job, people barely have time to finish their own tasks. So how do they expand their thinking and without losing focus? If they have to do it, how they can do that?
I think there the exposure to liberal arts is something that I have personally experienced. I got an engineering background, but when I picked up my first job in the US, it was in a liberal arts school. And I continued teaching in the liberal arts milieu for the next 9 years that I was in the US. And there you find that people, when you sit in a classroom and you have students who have a background in computer science, a student who has a background, let's say, in music or in art, and they come together and for example analyze a case, and most of my teaching is through case studies. They bring different perspectives. So when you dance with disciplines, you are realizing that there are multiple perspectives to the same problem.
Got it. Priyank, sir, your take on that? Mhm.
Yeah. Uh, Shashank, there are very many tools available online today for you to take a decision that I want to go beyond my core discipline and learn something new. ये डिसीजन आपका अपना है, और अगर आप ये डिसीजन लेते हैं तो अपॉर्चुनिटीज बहुत है. You don't have to go back to college. You don't have to go back to a formal learning system. Very often we are very diffident to getting out of our comfort zone. So अगर मैं फाइनेंस में हूँ तो मैं फाइनेंस रिलेटेड टॉपिक्स पढ़ूंगा. And that's where the challenge is. I'm not willing to say, can I learn something in international relations? Can I learn something in strategy? Can I learn something in physics? We want multiple disciplines to come together. It is an exercise in opening up your mind, which we are often reluctant to do. So the submission to your listeners is pick up a topic, go online, read about it, hear about it, learn about it, and enjoy it. And find people who are experts in that in your circle so that you can have a conversation with them. And when you start doing this, and you can say, okay, for this quarter, I want to just learn this one new thing or explore this one new area, you'll really find the pleasure of getting different disciplines. We actually, it's the subtitle of the chapter is when ideas have sex. It's really about intermingling ideas. How do ideas from different disciplines come together? You'll find that that really opens up the mind. Otherwise, all standard answers are there online, on social media, everywhere.
Right. I'll give you an example about myself. So I have zero coding knowledge. I have done my engineering in electronics and communication, and I came across this AI site where you can give in a prompt and you can build a website. So I started playing around with it. And last week I developed a full-blown job portal from that website itself. And the learning was so humongous because the tech words or the definitions that my friend who are working in tech used to talk about, I had zero idea what they are talking about. Within a week, because of doing that exercise, now I understand what goes on in the tech world. So this, I totally agree that you should be dancing with disciplines because then only the learning happens. But there is one more thing, which is the second last chapter, that is curating the chaos. So basically cutting through the clutter. What's your take on this, and how can one through basically navigate through chaos which is always around them? So what are some of the tips or hacks that you'd like to share with the audience? Mhm.
Young people make choices based on how choices are presented to them,
Right.
right? Curation is about how you get your, present what choices you want to make, what choices um, other people are making. And if you can get the clutter out, you will have a much, much better way of getting things done. That is the core of curation. It is really about thinking slightly minimalistic, living also slightly minimalistic. How much clutter do you physically have around yourself? How much clutter do you have on your laptop and folders that you've never opened for years and years? And then when you run a search, you actually go through everything. So how do you simplify your life with what is really essential and minimalistic? Okay.
Yeah, so I think this is a topic that I think we are all confronted today with, because the amount of information that is available and circulating, we have to find ways and means of distilling what we think is important to us
Right.
and what is relevant for the assignment or the job that we are doing. And that again will come with some experience as you realize that you need to be minimalistic and you do it again and again and again. You will learn intuitively what is relevant to the topic that you have at hand.
Right. So, what is the mental model that you both deploy? Because I also have started doing this thing that the information that I consume is very minimal. It's only related to the topics that are very relevant to me. So, mindless scrolling, I have put a full stop to it because, anyways, I assume that I have only 64 MB bit of memory with me. So, when it's 64 MB, there is very less space. So, I operate in that tangent. But what is the mental model that you both deploy to be very selective with the type of information or content that you are consuming?
Mhm.
So
Mukesh?
I have a simple rule. Firstly, I try and avoid getting too much in depth about the topic that I'm comfortable with. So, for example, when you are at an airport, you meet somebody whom you don't know. You're sitting next to a co-passenger. It's very easy to talk about a topic that you are familiar with and that you come from. We all like hearing our own voice. But if you start getting into the topic or the subject that your co-passenger is knowledgeable about, you may find intriguing nuggets of information
Right.
that can take you in a different direction. So, mindless scrolling, as you said, is not the right way to go. But if you bring in other perspectives into your worldview, you might then increase your knowledge base. Priyank, what do you think?
So, Shashank, I'll give a very interesting tip on this. You know, I often, during my every month, I try and meet at least one or two people from a different department or a different discipline at the university. And that is a very conscious decision. So I catch them for lunch, take them for coffee, whatever works for them or for me. If your listeners can do that consciously, because you end up making, let's say, a lunch group, and you go for lunch with the same gang every day. Once a month, try to do it with somebody in a different sphere, different department, and you'll see that the conversation will change. That's a very important part of also being able to curate what kind of information that you're really talking about.
Got it. I think in Google we have this concept called as lunch ninjas, where you can fill in a form and randomly you will be assigned some person from different department or team. So you can go and sit down, have lunch with them and understand that what is going on. So that is one way through. I have also network across teams because I'm part of sales team here. So very rarely I get to interact with say either engineering team or maybe team behind GP. So those interactions happen because of these lunch ninjas. But if I talk about chaos, if in current scenario, if we look at it, so the market right now is such that the job openings are fewer. At the same time, the candidates are giving their best. And also, then there are talks about that how you should be going about investment, how you should be saving. So there are multiple things in your life that you need to stack rank. So how you prioritize and what is your Pareto principle for prioritizing all of these things? Maybe if I talk about career, finances, maybe personal life, professional life, how do you plan to strike a balance and any advice that you'd like to give to audience?
Go ahead, Priyank.
So Shashank, it depends on what phase of life you're in.
Right.
It's what's important to you at that point of time. And just as we were talking, Shashank, before we started, there is a phase of life that you're in where you have to focus on your time on your family, you have to focus your time on your career. Sometimes money is overridingly important. Sometimes parents are overridingly important. So figure out what works for you and put a priority matrix based on that. And that keeps changing. Do not try to look at somebody else's life and career and then say, okay, I want to live something like this, because that won't work for you. Prioritization is very, very personal. Curation in that sense is very, very personal. So you need to figure out what's working for you at that point of time. And that may change every week also, because, for example, work situations changes, family situations, somebody is at home, those things matter, health issues matter. So these are how you will have to prioritize things.
And I think that is the best definition for work-life balance also. So I think doing 7 hours or 17 hours is not balance. What you rightly told is balance. Ki if you are able to balance your phase of life in a great manner, then that is what can be termed as a good work-life balance. Mukesh, sir, your take on it.
So again, I find that if you get too into depth on one particular topic and you are trying to finish that and complete it and put it away, it doesn't work. But if you spend a little time on it and then move on to something else, your brain, your mind continues to work on the problem that has not been completed. And you get some insight without really trying. And when you go back to that problem or go back to that area or that domain, you find simple solutions. So sometimes we get into a box where we are just trying to incrementally move it forward without any success. I see that in my writing all the time. That sometimes I get stuck at a chapter or get stuck in a thought and I'm not able to complete that paragraph. But I leave it alone and then it works in the background and suddenly something clicks. And I go back and then the paragraph goes so smoothly and nicely that you can complete the entire page or the entire section.
Great, great. I'd like to double down on that piece because if we look at currently, we have talked about during this podcast a lot about tech intervention. So, how you, as someone who are closely associated with academia, upskilling yourself, or what are some of the things that you both are now doing that we were not doing 5 years back when it comes to upskilling? So, what are the changes that have happened in your day-to-day life because of tech intervention?
Shashank, we both read a lot. We both actually consume a lot of content which is relevant to our areas. But like I've said, we also look at areas beyond our immediate sort of subjects or disciplines that we are focused on. We look at a lot of online courses. We sign up for some of them. We discuss some of them with colleagues. And we also become part of various groups. And it's easy now with WhatsApp and WhatsApp groups to be part of certain discussion areas. For example, AI is an interest of both of us. And more than that, we are looking at frugal AI. How do we develop AI models frugally without the kind of cost that the US models have? And so we're trying to now engage with groups that are having these conversations. One classic way of doing it is actually picking that topic up and discussing it in class, or getting our colleagues to talk about it in the coffee room. So there are various ways you can actually create an engagement around something that you want to build your knowledge, your skills around. But Mukesh has an interesting way that he does it. Mukesh,
Um,
you want to talk about
I'm
the
not sure.
course?
I'm sorry.
I said the course that we teach becomes an outcome of.
Yeah. So I find if you are interested in a topic and you really want to get into depth on it and you're not conversant with it, offer a course in it. That will force you to first make a syllabus, talk to other people who are experts in it. And as the course comes together, your confidence level keeps going up. I'll give a small example of an area that I got involved in. I post on LinkedIn regularly, 3 times a week. And somebody suggested that, look, these days, besides regular posting, why don't you try a video post?
That is picking up on LinkedIn.
So I did one and it was terrible. In fact, when I go back and see it, it was done about a month ago. I wonder how I put it up. But it got rave reviews.
Right,
And then I started engaging a little bit more to say, how can I improve the lighting? How can I make sure that the eye contact is correctly done? How do I make sure that I'm not reading from a text? And as you keep asking these questions of young people, and I find young people give you quick answers that you are not even aware of. And sometimes the answers are so simple that you wonder why you didn't do it yourself.
right, right. And so in terms of upskilling yourself, do you also use a lot of AI tools? I wanted to understand that also. In academia, are there AI tools are making an inroad? Like if I talk about in general corporate thing, if you look at it, so ChatGPT people are using for maybe debugging their codes, or maybe then people are using some kind of tool to generate images that they are using in their marketing campaigns. Are there any tools related to academia also that you are referring, or it is making your work easier these days?
Shashank, we use all the tools our students use because we have to be, completely conversant with how they're using it, what they're using it for,
A
and we have
step
to
ahead of your
one
students
step
to
ahead.
catch.
Absolutely. So that
Right.
puts pressure on us to be completely, conversant with some of these tools. And guess what? We have to ask them to teach us.
Well,
So it's a little bit of reverse mentoring that goes on. But that's the fun part of it. That's the fun part of being in a classroom. And like Mukesh said, their ideas sometimes are often more exciting and how they're using it. So
plus, you always remain young because you don't age. You are always between youngsters. So average age is always taken care of.
I all my posts have images. We call them illustrations.
Right.
And I use tools to generate fun illustrations. And it keeps me mesmerized because I want something that is minimalistic. It is simple lines, simple black and white, but it should draw the reader's or the viewer's interest. So I use a tool called Imagine AI, and I've subscribed to it, and it helps me generate options. Some of them are so hilarious and nice that I then write a post on it because it's so much fun. So we use tools all the time, and we have to be open-minded to know that we are very clumsy initially when we use the tool, and it gives you the opposite of what you want. But as you prompt it and learn the art of prompting, and prompting today is a big field.
Right.
How can you prompt AI to give you the answers you're looking for, and that takes you forward.
I think Imagine AI is something that I'll also use because right now I get all these snippets from Dilbert and then try to post a funny post regarding that when I'm talking on LinkedIn. I'll move to the last chapter, which is entrepreneurial mindset, and you have to think in that direction. So, if somebody is working in their job, how can they develop this mindset, and what are your tips for people who are having a 9 to 5 job? How can they think entrepreneurially?
Mukesh, do you want to start on this one?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. So there are two, three things, Shashank, which are very critical here. One is that what are the resources that you have available?
Right.
We often sit down and think and that we want to do something. But we'll do it when we get it, when we have money, when we have time, when we have contacts, when we have a network, uh, and we wait for that. What we are trying to bring out in this chapter, in this conversation, is start with your bird in hand, start with what you have. Right? It comes from a very interesting theory of entrepreneurship called effectuation, which was popularized by Professor Saras Saraswati at Darden. But all it's saying is some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world are not people who have waited for the perfect set of resources to come to them. They have started with what they have in hand and navigated their way through building networks, being in charge, being the pilot in the plane of their journey, and going forward and creating wonderful organizations and wonderful, value for them. One very important element here, Shashank, is that you can be entrepreneurial in anything and everything that you do. You don't need to just be entrepreneur and say, I want to create a startup, I want to create an organization. If you're doing a job, you can be entrepreneurial in that. If you're working in the government, you can be entrepreneurial in that. If you're working in an NGO, you can be entrepreneurial in that. And most importantly, if you're a homemaker and if you're a parent, you are the biggest entrepreneur because you are solving problems of every day in the process of parenting and running a home. So there is a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit that each one of us has. It's very important to sharpen it. It's very important to leverage what we have in our hand and really think and become entrepreneur.
Please say your take on this.
So, Shashank, attached to that chapter is what we call a personal journey map.
Yeah, right.
This is a toolkit that we have offered in the book.
Mhm.
And it is basically asking yourself some questions and charting out your journey. So, one section is my current repertoire. And there you have to answer some questions to fill those boxes up. This is actually a copy or adapted from what is called a business model canvas or a BMC, which is what startup entrepreneurs use today. They put the entire journey of their business in boxes. So we have adapted the personal journey map from the business model canvas. The first part is your current repertoire. The second is the landscape ahead. Again, through a set of questions, we get you to fill those boxes. And the third one is your curated path. So it actually is a summary of the various chapters, but it's more probably oriented towards the chapter on entrepreneurship. You make this personal journey map, and then you ask yourself, what is the first step that you will take towards achieving that objective and that goal? And then you keep revisiting the PGM, as we call it for short, at regular intervals to evaluate the progress you've made and the additional steps that you need to take.
Got
We
it.
got our students to fill up the PGMs, and that's how the whole our journey into the PGM started.
Yeah, and I think those watching the video, you can get the downloadable version. It's present on the site. I'll give the site link in the description so that you can go through it. There are a couple of final set of questions, just moving away from the book, that I wanted to touch base on, are very close to me. Like a gross enrollment ratio, if you look at now, we have to increase it, and people enrolling in higher education, it has to go up. So what are certain things that you feel that should be done, or maybe I'm not aware of, that are happening around us to increase this gross enrollment ratio and people going for higher education? And you see online playing a big part here as well, that online degree or online programs will become mainstream going forward. Mhm. Priyank, you're on mute, right?
I'm so sorry. We have to make those programs relevant. We have to make those programs get people to move beyond their current level of thinking, engagement, financial capabilities, and so on. So GR will increase if our programs will help them sort of move into the next realm of financial independence. Um, Also, what's happening, Shashank, is that the world is changing so fast that education models are not being able to catch up with the changes there. And that puts a lot of pressure on the individual student that they need to find what's relevant. So, for example, the whole realm of product development is changing with AI. The way product development verticals have been structured in various organizations. Now, the product manager is expected to, do basic coding based on AI itself. There are lots of things which have changed so quickly that the education system is still struggling to sort of catch up and play catch up there. But it's going to happen, and I think people are going to realize the value of studying further, skilling themselves further. Uh, I think it's not just enrollment. I think what are we skilling on is very
Right.
so don't just look at a gross enrollment ratio and say this is the most important criteria we need.
The other thing, Shashank, is that you have to draw students in by offering things that they are interested in.
Right.
Now, we've written a story about Manjul Bhargava. Now, Manjul Bhargava is a mathematician of Indian origin. He's now based in Canada. And he offers a very basic introductory course in mathematics. He has a PhD in math, but he spent more time learning Sanskrit and Indian classical music thanks to his grandparents. So he brings a different perspective to math, and he comes to India pretty often. Now, when he teaches a course, the only reading material in the first half of the course is a pack of playing cards. The course is called The Magic of Mathematics. And he then plays games with the cards and then teaches you the math behind the game. And that draws students in. So you have to make it interesting. If you have a course that is labeled wrongly and that doesn't excite either the faculty teaching it or the students, you're heading into the wrong direction. But if you bring in, for example, you just mentioned the dancing with disciplines. Now we titled the chapter in such a way that we wanted people to say, what is dancing with disciplines?
Right.
What is when ideas have sex? These were small nuggets that we have used, or small chapter openings that we have used to draw the reader in. We have used so many illustrations in the book that you have seen,
Right.
which make you want to know what is this story about. So you have to grab the young person's interest today, because today with social media and the internet, there's a pull in so many different directions. I
Right.
mean, we say this with all intellectual humility. The book has done very well. It has sold 20, 30, 40,000 copies in the first year. Now, all that has happened because the book was of interest to young people, and you need to be doing that.
So Shashank, just before we close, I want to read out a beautiful story for your listeners. This is the story of Satvik Hegde. In 2019, Satvik Hegde was standing in line to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi during his visit to Houston, Texas. About 50,000 people had gathered to see and hear the Indian Prime Minister and then US President, of course, now US President Donald Trump. As the two leaders walked past the children, Satvik stepped forward and asked for a selfie. President Trump agreed. Prime Minister Modi, who was a few steps ahead, turned back to join the huddle. Extending his hand, Satvik clicked the most powerful selfie in the world. The expression on the face of the girl next to Satvik told a bigger story. Her eyes widened and her hands covered her mouth. How could Satvik be so audacious? Later, in a television interview, the 13-year-old was nonchalant. He said, "It doesn't really hurt to ask for something that you want." And why? Because if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Right.
And Shashank, we want to leave this message with everybody that if you want help, if you have something that if you need something from people, ask for it. People are happy to help. People are happy to contribute. And on that positive note, thank you so much for having us as a part of your podcast.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for taking our time. Yes.